First story, by Sarah Anderson. The chill of the autumn night hung heavy in the air as I approached the old Riverside Hotel, a dilapidated structure sitting on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio. The once grand building now stood as a haunting reminder of days gone by. My friends and I had heard rumors of strange occurrences at the Riverside, and curiosity had driven us to explore the abandoned structure one fateful night. As we cautiously stepped through the shattered glass doors into the lobby, the silence was deafening. The floors creaked beneath our feet, sending shivers down our spines. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls. There was a sense of foreboding that clung to the air, a feeling that we were not alone. As we ventured deeper into the hotel, we began to notice odd markings on the walls. They looked like symbols, hastily scrawled in dark ink. One of my friends, John, pointed to a set of numbers and letters that read, "For be keep out." It sent a shiver down my spine, but I brushed it off as a prank from previous trespassers. The strangest encounter came when we entered one of the hotel rooms. The door to room 412 swung open with an eerie creak, revealing a scene that made our hearts race. The room was in disarray, as if someone had ransacked it, but what truly sent fear through our veins was the sight of a tattered journal on the floor. I picked it up and began to read. The journal detailed the experiences of a man who had stayed at the Riverside Hotel years ago. His writings grew increasingly frantic as he described hearing voices in the walls, whispers that spoke of dark secrets and forbidden knowledge. He wrote of shadowy figures that moved in the dark corners of his room and of a relentless dread that had consumed him. The final entry simply read, "They're watching. I can't escape." Terror washed over us as we read those words. We heard a faint, distant sound, like footsteps echoing through the hallways. Panicking, we dropped the journal and fled the room. The sense of being watched followed us as we rushed down the decaying hallways. We stumbled upon a hidden staircase leading to the basement. The concrete steps were slick with moisture, and a pungent odor filled the air. As we descended, the sound of footsteps grew louder, echoing from above. We reached the basement, and our flashlights revealed a chamber filled with rusty tools and a crude bed with restraints. Panic set in as we realized that someone had been living down here. A shuffling noise drew our attention to a dark corner. We aimed our flashlights at it, revealing a hunched figure wrapped in tattered clothing. A wild look in their eyes, they muttered incomprehensible words. As they lunged towards us, we turned and sprinted up the stairs. The footsteps from above grew louder, and the sense of being pursued pushed us to run faster. We burst out of the hotel and into the cold night, never looking back. The Riverside Hotel loomed behind us, its secrets and horrors buried within its crumbling walls. Second story, by David Mitchell. It was a crisp November evening when my friends and I decided to explore the abandoned steel mill on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The stories we'd heard about the place ranged from it being a haven for drug addicts to a hotspot for urban explorers. We wanted to see for ourselves what secrets the decaying industrial behemoth held. As we entered the mill, the smell of rust and decay assaulted our senses. The sound of dripping water echoed through the massive halls. Graffiti adorned the walls, telling a story of those who had come before us. It was clear that we were not alone, but we weren't sure who else might be lurking in the shadows. We wandered deeper into the labyrinthine structure, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. It was when we reached the upper levels that we heard it, faint, distant laughter. It was eerie, echoing through the empty corridors. We followed the sound to a room with a partially collapsed ceiling. There, we found a group of people huddled together, their faces obscured by tattered clothing and makeshift masks. Their laughter turned into maniacal cackles as they noticed us. Their leader, a woman in a frayed wedding dress, stepped forward, her eyes filled with madness. She spoke in cryptic riddles, warning us to leave before it was too late. We were unnerved but determined to continue our exploration. As we moved deeper into the steel mill, the laughter followed us, growing closer with each step. It was then that we stumbled upon a large, dimly lit chamber with a massive steel door. It was sealed shut, but strange symbols were etched into its surface. The laughter was now all around us, coming from every direction. We were trapped, surrounded by the deranged figures in tattered clothing. Panic set in as we desperately tried to find an escape. With a collective, frenzied effort, we managed to pry open the steel door, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. We rushed inside, hoping to find safety. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, and the walls were lined with strange symbols, similar to those on the steel door. We had no choice but to press on, driven by fear and a relentless pursuit by the laughing, masked figures. Finally, the tunnel led us to an underground chamber, illuminated only by the pale light of the moon filtering through a cracked ceiling. In the center of the room, we found a wooden table covered in bizarre, occult symbols. It seemed like a place of worship or ritual. As we explored the chamber, the laughter grew louder and more deranged. We knew we had to leave, but the tunnel had vanished, leaving us trapped in this underground nightmare. The laughter continued, echoing through the chamber as we desperately searched for an exit, our hearts pounding in our chests. Third Story, by Emma Taylor. In the quiet town of Salem, Massachusetts, my group of friends and I decided to explore an abandoned asylum that had long been the subject of local legends and ghost stories. The asylum had been closed for decades, and its foreboding presence loomed over the town like a dark cloud. We entered the crumbling building under the cover of night. The rusted gate creaked open as we ventured into the asylum's courtyard. The moonlight revealed broken windows and a sense of decay that sent shivers down our spines. We moved cautiously, our flashlights cutting through the thick darkness. As we explored the asylum, we stumbled upon a room with a single flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The room was adorned with peculiar symbols and strange drawings. It was evident that someone had been using it for some unknown purpose. It sent a wave of unease through us, but we pressed on. Deeper into the asylum, we heard footsteps echoing in the distance. It was the sound of hurried, purposeful movement. The air grew heavy with anticipation, and we realized that we were not alone in the building. Panic set in as we tried to determine who else might be there with us. We continued down the corridor, our flashlights revealing more of the eerie symbols on the walls. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from a side room, their face obscured by a mask. They were dressed in tattered clothing, and their movements were erratic. We froze, our hearts racing. The masked figure approached us and spoke in a raspy, hollow voice. They warned us to leave, their words filled with an intensity that sent chills down our spines. They claimed that the asylum was a place of dark rituals and that we were in grave danger. Ignoring their warning, we pressed on, determined to uncover the truth about the asylum. We reached a locked door, and as we attempted to force it open, the masked figure appeared again. They spoke of the malevolent forces that dwelled within the asylum, and their ominous words left us even more unsettled. With a final warning, the figure disappeared into the shadows. As we entered the room beyond the locked door, we were met with a chilling sight. The room was filled with a collection of grotesque and twisted medical instruments, and a feeling of dread washed over us. It was then that we heard a series of loud, discordant sounds like the wailing of the damned. Panic overcame us, and we fled the asylum, leaving behind the unsettling secrets and horrors that lurked within its decaying walls. The chilling encounter with the masked figure served as a stark reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, for their history holds the power to terrify and haunt those who dare to explore them. Fourth Story, by Jonathan Carter. In the small town of Rovaniemi, deep within the Arctic Circle of Finland, a peculiar and unsettling event unfolded one winter night. My friends and I had decided to explore an abandoned lumber mill that had been closed for years. The eerie setting of the snow-covered forest and the hulking silhouette of the mill made our adventure all the more daunting. We arrived at the mill around midnight, bundled up in layers of winter clothing. The crisp, frigid air bit at our faces as we approached the decaying structure. Our footprints in the snow left a trail leading back to the warmth and safety of the town. Little did we know that our curiosity would lead us to a night of terror. The interior of the lumber mill was a stark contrast to the winter wonderland outside. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath our boots as we cautiously navigated through the darkness with our flashlights. We had heard tales of the mill being a haven for vagrants and squatters, but what we encountered was far stranger. In one of the rooms, we stumbled upon a crude altar adorned with candles, feathers, and animal bones. It appeared to be a place of worship or ritual, and the symbols etched into the floor were unsettlingly unfamiliar. As we explored further, the sound of whispering voices echoed through the corridors. The voices were faint, yet chilling, and they seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. Panic surged through us as we realized that there were others in the mill with us, though we couldn't see anyone. We pressed on, drawn by a strange compulsion to find the source of the whispers. The voices became more distinct, murmuring in a language we couldn't comprehend. We rounded a corner and found ourselves in a vast chamber filled with eerie, life-size dolls. They were propped up on wooden chairs, their glassy eyes staring into the distance. The dolls were dressed in tattered, weathered clothing and had the appearance of long-abandoned children's playthings. The whispers grew louder, and we noticed that they were coming from the dolls themselves. Each doll seemed to have a different voice, some filled with sorrow, while others were filled with madness. It was a nightmarish sight, and the whispers grew more intense, as if the dolls were trying to communicate something. But their words were garbled and incoherent, adding to our growing sense of dread. We felt like intruders in a place that we didn't belong, and we needed to escape. As we turned to leave, the dolls' whispers transformed into unhinged laughter, echoing through the chamber. We fled the mill, our hearts pounding and our minds filled with the chilling images of the dolls and their unsettling voices. The night in the abandoned lumber mill had left us shaken, and we couldn't shake the feeling that we had encountered something far beyond our understanding. Fifth Story, by Mark Williams. On a sweltering summer night in New Orleans, Louisiana, my friends and I embarked on an adventure to explore an abandoned plantation house deep in the bayou. The old mansion had a haunting history, with tales of voodoo practices and eerie occurrences that had plagued the area for centuries. The thick, humid air clung to our skin as we approached the overgrown plantation. The moonlight filtered through the dense foliage, casting eerie shadows on the moss-draped trees. We had heard whispers of strange rituals and ghostly sightings in this place, and our curiosity drove us forward. As we stepped inside the decaying mansion, the air grew heavy with the scent of damp wood and decay. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet, and the dim light of our flashlights revealed faded wallpaper peeling from the walls. It was as if the house itself was whispering its dark secrets to us. We ventured deeper into the mansion, our flashlights revealing old family portraits and abandoned furniture. But what truly sent shivers down our spines was the sound of distant chanting. The rhythmic, melodic voices carried through the air, and we realized that we were not alone in the mansion. We followed the sound of the chanting, moving cautiously down a narrow corridor. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and intricate drawings. The chanting grew louder, filling the air with an unsettling energy that seemed to pulse through the house. As we turned a corner, we were met with a shocking sight. A group of people, dressed in tattered clothing and adorned with beads and feathers, stood in a circle around a crude altar. They chanted in a language that we couldn't understand, their voices filled with a mix of reverence and desperation. The sight of the chanting groups sent fear coursing through us, and we made the hasty decision to retreat. As we retraced our steps, the chanting followed us, growing louder and more intense. It was as if the very walls of the mansion were alive with the eerie sounds. We reached the front door, our hearts pounding, and burst out into the oppressive night. The abandoned plantation house loomed behind us, a place of dark rituals and unknown forces. Our experience left us with a lingering sense of unease, a feeling that we had crossed a threshold into a world filled with mysteries that would forever remain unsolved. Each of these stories takes you on a thrilling journey into the eerie and unsettling world of abandoned buildings at night, where the line between reality and the unknown blurs, leaving a lasting sense of unease and dread. Sixth Story, by Sophie Turner. In the small village of Ballybeg, on the rugged west coast of Ireland, there was an old, abandoned monastery with a history steeped in mystery and tragedy. My friends and I, intrigued by the legends that surrounded the place, decided to explore the ruins one cold, foggy night. The crumbling monastery, with its stone walls covered in ivy, stood on a hill overlooking the restless Atlantic Ocean. We approached the ancient structure, our flashlights barely cutting through the thick, swirling mist that enveloped us. The air was damp and cold, adding to the eerie atmosphere. As we entered the dilapidated building, the echoing silence was broken only by the sound of our footsteps on the uneven stone floor. The walls were adorned with faded frescoes depicting saints and angels, but the years had taken their toll on the artwork, leaving the figures distorted and haunting. We had heard tales of the monastery being a site of strange occurrences, and our senses were on high alert. As we ventured deeper into the building, we noticed a faint light emanating from a chamber down the hallway. The light was accompanied by the soft, rhythmic chanting of a choir. We followed the source of the light and the ethereal voices, eventually entering a chamber with a large, ornate altar. The room was filled with shadowy figures, their faces hidden by hooded robes. They knelt before the altar, the candlelight casting flickering, ghostly shadows on the walls. The chanting grew louder, and the atmosphere became charged with a sense of otherworldly power. We couldn't discern the language they chanted in, but the eerie melody sent chills down our spines. We were invisible observers in a mysterious and unsettling ritual. As we watched, the figures chanting became more frantic, their movements more intense. Their voices reached an unsettling crescendo, and the air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. The room felt charged with an ancient and dark power that we couldn't comprehend. Panicked, we made our way out of the monastery, leaving the chanting figures behind in their haunting ritual. The fog outside seemed thicker, and we couldn't shake the feeling that we had witnessed something beyond our understanding, something that tied the abandoned monastery to an age-old secret. Seventh Story, by Lucas Hernandez. In the sleepy town of Bucksville, South Carolina, there was an old, deserted cotton mill that had been abandoned for decades. The building was a haunting reminder of the town's once thriving textile industry. My friends and I, always in search of adventure, decided to explore the mill one eerie autumn night. The moon cast an eerie glow over the overgrown mill as we approached. The rusted gates groaned in protest as we entered the property, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and aged machinery. The sound of crickets and distant owls created an eerie symphony that surrounded us. As we ventured inside the decaying mill, the darkness was suffocating. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath our weight, and the pale beams of our flashlights revealed a labyrinth of rusted machines, tangled conveyor belts, and decaying bales of cotton. The building was a time capsule of a bygone era, but it was not the only thing that had been preserved. In one of the abandoned offices, we stumbled upon a makeshift campsite, complete with sleeping bags and a small cookstove. The signs of recent occupancy were unmistakable. Panic set in as we realized that someone had been living in the mill, hiding in the shadows. We pressed on, our flashlights revealing more signs of recent activity. We heard faint, whispering voices that seemed to echo through the corridors. Our hearts raced as we followed the sound, leading us to a room filled with bizarre symbols etched into the floor. The symbols appeared to be part of some arcane ritual, and our unease deepened. The whispers grew louder, and the air seemed to buzz with an unsettling energy. It was as if the very walls of the mill were trying to communicate with us, conveying a message that we couldn't decipher. As we continued to explore, we stumbled upon a hidden chamber tucked away in the depths of the mill. The room was illuminated by a single, flickering candle, and it was adorned with symbols and markings. In the center of the room, a strange, ancient-looking book lay open, its pages filled with indecipherable text. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, their eyes filled with madness. They spoke in a language we couldn't understand, their voice a cacophony of bizarre sounds. Panic set in, and we fled the room, determined to escape the eerie mill and the enigmatic figure. We rushed out of the cotton mill and back into the night, the building standing like a sentinel of the past. The experience had left us shaken and filled with a sense of unease, as if we had stumbled upon a hidden world within the abandoned mill, a world filled with secrets and mysteries that would forever remain beyond our grasp. Eighth Story, by Rachel Bennett. On the outskirts of Lyon, France, there stood a forsaken mansion known as Château de l'Obscurite, which translated to Castle of Darkness. My friends and I, all thrill-seekers, decided to explore this enigmatic place one fateful night. The mansion's history was shrouded in darkness, and its legends spoke of the macabre and the inexplicable. As we approached the imposing chateau, the moonlight painted eerie shadows on its turrets and crumbling walls. The air was thick with foreboding, and the distant howling of a lone wolf added to the ominous atmosphere. We pushed open the massive wooden doors and stepped into the cold, echoing darkness. Inside, the mansion was a maze of forgotten grandeur, its rooms adorned with fading tapestries and ancient furniture. The silence was punctuated only by the soft rustling of our footsteps and the occasional creaking of the floorboards beneath us. We soon discovered a grand hall where an elaborately carved wooden table was covered in dust and cobwebs, and ornate, rotting candelabras hung from the ceiling. But what unnerved us the most was a series of portraits adorning the walls, each depicting a different person with an expression of sheer terror. As we delved deeper into the mansion, we stumbled upon an underground chamber with stone walls adorned with disturbing inscriptions. The symbols and drawings seemed to tell a story of despair and madness, and the air grew colder as we explored further. In a corner of the chamber, we found a collection of handwritten journals, each detailing the descent into darkness of the mansion's former inhabitants. They spoke of inexplicable occurrences, visions of shadowy figures, and a feeling of being relentlessly pursued by an unseen malevolence. As we read, the wind outside howled with an eerie intensity, and we realized that we were not alone in the mansion. A sound, like whispering voices, filled the chamber, but there was no one in sight. The darkness seemed to press in on us, and we decided to leave the château before we, too, succumbed to its haunting past. Ninth Story, by Daniel Mitchell. In the historic city of Edinburgh, Scotland, my friends and I embarked on a chilling adventure to explore an abandoned underground tunnel system that ran beneath the city. These tunnels had a storied past, serving as hideouts and makeshift homes for criminals and the destitute over the centuries. On this particular night, we sought to uncover their secrets. As we descended into the subterranean labyrinth, the air grew damp and chilly, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed through the tunnels. The walls were covered in layers of graffiti, giving the tunnels an eerie, underground gallery vibe. It felt as though the weight of history pressed down on us. The tunnels twisted and turned, forming a complex maze, and we gradually lost our sense of direction. In one section, we came upon a chamber that had been converted into a makeshift bedroom. The floor was covered with tattered blankets and discarded items, suggesting that someone had been living there. The realization that we were not alone in the tunnels sent shivers down our spines, and we pressed on, seeking an exit. As we navigated the maze, we heard faint, distant laughter. The laughter was tinged with a manic quality that left us unsettled. We followed the sound to a narrow passageway, and as we rounded the corner, we were confronted by a group of people huddled together, their faces obscured by dirty clothing and makeshift masks. They were engaged in a chaotic and disconcerting performance, a grotesque parody of a feast. The leader of the group, a man in a tattered suit, approached us, his eyes filled with madness. He spoke in a frenzied, disjointed manner, warning us to leave the tunnels before it was too late. He claimed that the underground was a place of twisted rituals and that they were the last remnants of a hidden society. We heeded his warning, and our hurried escape from the tunnels was accompanied by the echoes of eerie laughter. The experience left us with a lingering sense of unease, a feeling that the hidden world beneath Edinburgh held secrets and horrors that we could barely comprehend. 10th Story, by Maria Sanchez. In the historic district of Prague, Czech Republic, there was an abandoned, Gothic-style mansion known as the Dvořák Manor. The mansion was known for its dark history, with stories of gruesome murders and strange happenings that had plagued the property for centuries. My friends and I, drawn by the tales of the supernatural, ventured into the mansion one eerie winter night. The Dvořák Manor, with its towering spires and shadowy silhouette, loomed ominously against the night sky. The air was frigid, and the cobblestone path leading to the mansion was slick with ice. We pushed open the heavy wooden doors, and a musty scent enveloped us as we entered the gloomy interior. The mansion's interior was a labyrinth of narrow corridors and rooms filled with decaying furniture and peeling wallpaper. The air was heavy with a sense of history, and our footsteps echoed ominously as we explored the ancient building with our flashlights. In one room, we stumbled upon a collection of old portraits that adorned the walls. The faces in the paintings appeared to distort and change as our flashlights swept over them, giving the eerie impression that the subjects were watching us with malevolent intent. Deeper within the mansion, we discovered a hidden chamber with strange symbols etched into the floor. The symbols seemed to tell a story of suffering and darkness, and a sense of dread washed over us as we tried to decipher their meaning. As we ventured further, we heard the faint sound of whispered voices that seemed to echo from all directions. The voices spoke in a language we couldn't understand, and the air grew heavy with an otherworldly presence. The sensation that we were not alone intensified. In one room, we found an old journal filled with the ramblings of a former resident of the mansion. The writings spoke of seeing shadowy figures and experiencing nightmarish visions. The journal described a sense of being trapped within the mansion, unable to escape its grasp. Our nerves were on edge as we continued our exploration, and the eerie whispers seemed to grow louder and more insistent. It was as though the very walls of the mansion were trying to communicate with us, but their message remained enigmatic. We eventually made our way out of the Dvorak Manor, our hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and fascination. The mansion stood as a testament to its dark history, a place where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred, leaving us with a haunting sense of the unknown. Thank you for joining us for the whole video. That video you see on screen is one of my favorite. Check it out. If you've enjoyed these horror stories, show your support by hitting the subscribe button. Did this tale send chills down your spine? Let me know in the comments.